My ex took me back to court over money he said I never deserved. You're paying every cent back. I agreed. What he didn't realize was that his demand gave me permission to claim something far more valuable. Years before that courtroom fight, I never imagined money would become the language of our divorce. When our first child, Piper, was born, Derek started pushing me to leave my job. At first, he made it sound practical. Think about daycare, he said one night. Half your paycheck will disappear before you even get to work. It wouldn't be forever. I know. But why make things harder than they need to be? I wasn't completely against staying home. Piper was tiny, and part of me wanted that time with her. But there was a difference between choosing something and slowly being made to feel selfish for choosing anything else. Whenever I mentioned returning to work, Derek had another argument ready. Daycare cost too much. My schedule would complicate his. If Piper got sick, I would probably have to leave work anyway. Eventually, he started saying, "Why have a child if you want strangers raising her?" That one got to me. So I stayed home. I told myself I would go back when things settled down. Then Lucas was born. By the time he was 2, I had been out of work for years. And by then, my marriage had changed. Derek had always been stubborn, but once I depended on him financially, he became controlling in ways I hadn't expected. Groceries were questioned. Small purchases became arguments. If dinner was late, he complained. If the kids were noisy when he got home, he blamed me. If I pushed back, he reminded me that I was home all day. I hated that phrase. I wasn't doing nothing. I was raising 2 children, keeping the house running, managing appointments, meals, laundry, school forms, sick days, bedtime, everything. But because none of it came with a paycheck, Derek acted like it didn't count. The arguments became uglier. He called me lazy, ungrateful, irresponsible. If I walked away from an argument, he followed me. A few times, he grabbed my arm or blocked a doorway. Nothing I want to describe in detail, but enough that I learned to pay attention to his mood before saying something he might not like. I convinced myself I could manage it. Then I found out about the affair. It happened in the most ordinary way possible. Derek left his phone charging on the kitchen counter while he went upstairs. I wasn't searching it. I wasn't even standing next to it when the screen lit up. A woman's name appeared. Then the message preview. "I miss you already." 4 words. That was all it took. When Derek came downstairs, I was still near the counter. He looked at my face, then at the phone. "Who is she?" "What?" I pointed at the screen. His expression changed for half a second. Then he got angry. "You went through my phone?" "No." The message popped up. "You were looking for something." I was cleaning the table. "You're always suspicious." I almost laughed. Apparently I had a reason. He picked up the phone. "You're making this into something it isn't. Then tell me who she is." He wouldn't. Not at first. The argument dragged on for nearly 2 hours. She was a friend. I was overreacting. Nothing had happened. Then maybe something had happened, but it wasn't serious. Eventually, enough of the truth came out. The affair had been going on for months. And somehow, Derek still found a way to blame me. "You don't pay attention to me anymore." I stared at him. "We have 2 children. That's exactly what I mean. Everything is about them. There are kids. You used to care about us." I looked around the kitchen. Crayons on the table. A cup beside the sink. One of Lucas's toy cars under a chair. This was the life Derek had insisted I dedicate myself to. Now he was telling me that doing exactly that had made me less important to him. I should have left then. I didn't. I was scared. Not just of Derek. Of everything that came after him. Where would we live? How would I pay for childcare? How quickly could I find work after years away? What would happen with custody? What would Derek do if I tried to leave? I had no family nearby who could simply take us in. So I started planning quietly. I gathered important documents. I opened an account in my own name. I looked at childcare costs. I searched for jobs I might realistically qualify for. I told almost no one. Then Derek made the decision for me. One evening, Piper spilled something after he had already told her to stay away from the table. He was in a bad mood. He snapped. She started crying. Instead of stopping, he got harsher. When she tried to move past him, he grabbed her arm. Not enough to leave some dramatic injury. Enough that she screamed. I was across the room before I realized I had moved. "Let her go." Derek looked at me. "She needs to learn." She's a child. She doesn't listen because you let her do whatever she wants. Piper ran behind me and held onto my shirt. That was it. I had spent years making excuses for what Derek did to me. I could not do that when it was my daughter. Pack a bag. He stared at me. What? You're leaving. He actually laughed. This is my house. Then I'll call someone and explain exactly what just happened. His face changed. You wouldn't. Yes, I would. For once, I meant it without hesitation. He told me I was overreacting. He accused me of turning Piper against him. He said I would regret throwing him out. I didn't argue. I just kept my phone in my hand. Eventually, he packed a bag and left. When the door closed, I locked it. Piper and Lucas sat together on the couch. I had no idea how I was going to manage the next week. But Derek wasn't in the house. For that night, that was enough. A few days later, I asked him for money. Not for anything extravagant. Groceries. Utilities. Things the kids needed. He refused. The courts haven't ordered me to give you a dime. I thought I had heard him wrong. They're your children. I know. They need food. Then get a job. You wanted me to stay home. And now you don't live with me. I went quiet. So you're not helping support them? I told you. Get a court order. That sentence stayed with me. Get a court order. So I did. The next several months were brutal. I tried to take whatever work I could manage around the kids, but daycare for 2 children would have swallowed most of what I earned. I sold things. Borrowed money. Applied for assistance. Learned exactly how far I could stretch a grocery trip. Then Derek interfered with our finances. He contacted the bank and disputed my access to money in accounts connected to both of us. The bank temporarily restricted access while the issue was reviewed. I discovered it at a grocery store. My card declined. I tried again. Declined. There were people behind me. Piper stood beside the cart. Lucas was asking for candy. I checked my phone and couldn't access what I expected. I had some cash. Not enough. So I started putting groceries back. Piper watched me. Mom, why are we putting the cereal back? We already have some at home. We didn't. That night, I called Derek. What did you do with the accounts? I protected my money. That money was paying for the kids. My paycheck was in there. So were household funds. You wanted to separate. Congratulations. You're punishing them. No. I'm making you responsible for your decision. Then he said it again. Get a court order. The divorce process moved slowly. Derek fought almost every step. Documents arrived late. Information was incomplete. Meetings were delayed. He seemed convinced that if he made everything exhausting enough, I would stop fighting. For roughly 6 months, I survived without consistent support from him. Then we finally got before a judge. My attorney, Clara, warned me beforehand. He may sound very reasonable in there. Don't react. Let the record speak. She was right. The man who yelled in private suddenly became soft-spoken. Calm. Concerned. He talked about wanting what was best for the children. I wanted to interrupt him. Clara kept whispering don't. So I didn't. The judge reviewed Derek's income, the children's needs, our financial situation, and the fact that I had been out of the workforce while raising our family. The court ordered child support plus temporary spousal support totaling a little over $2,500 a month. When we walked outside, Derek waited until Clara was several steps ahead. Then he leaned toward me. You're not getting that. It's already ordered. That doesn't mean I'm handing you money. He didn't. At least not voluntarily. He ignored the order. The unpaid balance climbed past $6,000 before enforcement fully caught up with him. His wages were garnished. Other penalties became possible if he continued refusing to comply. Suddenly, he was furious. For months, he had insisted he needed a court order before he would support his children. Now there was one, and he acted as if the court had done something unfair to him. Around that time, I asked for permission to relocate with Piper and Lucas. I wasn't trying to disappear. I had a real plan. Better childcare options. A stronger support network. More opportunities to rebuild my life. Derek objected immediately. But the court looked at the entire situation, including the instability caused by his inconsistent support and the arrangements I was trying to create for the kids. Eventually, I was allowed to move. That day didn't feel victorious. It felt exhausting. I packed boxes, loaded the car, made sure the kids had snacks and their favorite things nearby. checked my documents 3 times. Then I drove away. At some point, both kids fell asleep. For several miles, the car was completely silent. No phone ringing. No arguing. No one asking me to justify what I spent. For the first time in years, silence felt peaceful. The divorce became final. I rebuilt slowly. There were still bills, school schedules, custody exchanges, legal emails. But our home was calm. That mattered. The divorce decree also addressed Derek's retirement account. During the marriage, he had built up money in a 401k. Because part of that money had been accumulated while we were married, the decree preserved my right to the marital portion through the additional legal process required to divide it. I didn't complete that process right away. I was tired. Another financial fight was the last thing I wanted. So the retirement issue sat there, unfinished. Then I met Owen. I didn't fall for him because he rescued me. He didn't. What stood out was how normal kindness felt around him. If we disagreed, he didn't punish me. If I needed time, he gave me time. If I spent money on something reasonable, he didn't demand an explanation. The first time we had a serious disagreement, I spent half the night expecting yelling. The next morning, Owen made coffee and said, "We still need to figure this out." That was it. No threats. No 3-day argument. No silent punishment. Eventually, we married. Before the wedding, I reviewed my divorce paperwork again. My spousal support had only been ordered for a limited period. There was language about remarriage and whether support automatically ended. The way the final order had been completed was unclear enough that, based on the document and the fact that the garnishment remained active, I believed the existing order would continue unless it was formally changed. I didn't hide my marriage. I didn't falsify anything. The payments simply continued under the active order. The spousal support portion I received after marrying Owen totaled around $12,000. At the same time, I still had the unresolved right to complete the division of the marital portion of Derek's retirement. I made a decision. I would leave it alone. At the time, I guess my retirement share might be somewhere around $12,000 anyway. The numbers felt close enough. I would accept the remaining support being paid under the active order. I would not pursue the retirement. One less legal fight. That was all I wanted. Years passed. Then Derek filed for sole custody. Out of nowhere. I opened the paperwork at my kitchen table and read it twice. He wanted Piper and Lucas primarily with him. There had been no emergency. No major school problem. No dramatic change at home. The kids were settled. They had routines. Friends. A stable life. I called Clara. Why is he doing this? I don't know yet. Can he actually take them? Filing for something and getting it are two different things. I thought we were past all this. With Derek, I wouldn't assume that. The custody case reopened everything. Finances. Schedules. Old records. Remarriages. And that was when Derek focused on the fact that I had remarried before the temporary spousal support finished being paid. He called me. "You owe me money." I knew what he meant. The support. You were married. Yes. And you kept taking it. It continued under the existing order. You knew you weren't supposed to have it. No. The order was unclear. You're paying every cent back. That was the conversation from the beginning of this story. I told him, if you want to reopen that money, fine. But then I'm completing the retirement division. He went quiet. What retirement division? The 401k. You waived that. No, I didn't. Yes, you did. The decree preserved my share. I just never finished the paperwork. You're not touching my retirement. I wasn't planning to. Then don't. I'm giving you a choice. He laughed. What choice? Leave the $12,000 issue alone, and I leave the retirement issue alone. Push for repayment, and I finish the retirement division. That's blackmail. No. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You stole $12,000. I received money under an active order. You were remarried. And if the judge decides I owe it back, I'll repay it. Good. But I'm not leaving my retirement share behind just to make you happy after that. His voice hardened. You think some judge is going to give you my 401k? Not all of it. My share of the marital portion. You didn't earn that. There it was. The years I spent raising his children had no value because my name wasn't on a paycheck. I didn't argue. Then let the court decide. Fine. That one word changed everything. The judge eventually reviewed the remarriage issue and ruled that the spousal support I received after marrying Owen had to be repaid. It was roughly $12,000. Derek looked satisfied. But the court was also recalculating child support based on updated circumstances. That amount increased. Rather than making me produce one large check, the repayment was accounted for through the financial calculations while the new child support amount took effect. When everything was finished, the net amount I received each month was actually around $20 higher. I looked at the paperwork twice, then leaned toward Clara. Am I reading this correctly? Yes. So I owe him the money. Yes. But overall, I'm still getting slightly more each month. Yes. $20 wasn't life-changing. The irony was, Derek had fought to force repayment. Technically, he got that ruling. He just didn't get the financial punishment he had imagined. The custody case didn't go the way he expected either. After months of conflict, Derek dropped his request for sole custody. The final arrangement gave him 2 additional weeks with Piper and Lucas during the summer. That was it. Then Clara asked me the question I knew was coming. What do you want to do about the retirement? Part of me still wanted to walk away. I was tired again. Exactly like I had been after the divorce. Then I thought about Derek laughing at me. You're not touching my retirement. I thought about the years I had stayed home because he insisted it was best for our family. Those were also years when I hadn't been building retirement savings of my own. And I thought about the choice I had given him. I had offered to leave the account alone. He rejected it. Finish it, I told Clara. So we did. I expected the retirement division to take a few months. It took almost 4 years. Derek resisted at nearly every stage. A document hadn't arrived. A number needed checking. His attorney wanted more time. The plan administrator supposedly needed clarification. A deadline passed. Then another. At first, it drove me crazy. Eventually, I understood what he was doing. He wasn't trying to prove I had no legal claim. He was trying to make the process so exhausting that I would abandon it. That strategy had worked when we were married. If he made a disagreement miserable enough, eventually I stopped arguing. But now I didn't have to argue with him. The paperwork went through Clara. The hearings went through the court. Every missed deadline was documented. Every failure to cooperate was recorded. I didn't need Derek to agree with me. I only needed to keep showing up. At one hearing, the judge had clearly had enough. Derek's attorney started explaining another delay. The judge interrupted. This matter has been pending far longer than necessary. Derek tried to speak. The judge stopped him. You have been given repeated opportunities to comply. The court eventually sanctioned him for the unnecessary delays and non-compliance. For a period, he was ordered to pay an additional $600 a month related to those consequences and costs. There was also a contempt finding connected to his refusal to follow court requirements. The man who once told me a court order was the only thing that could make him pay was now discovering what happened when he ignored too many of them. During all of this, Derek had moved on romantically. His girlfriend, Sadie, had been around for a while. I barely knew her. If we crossed paths because of the kids, I was polite. That was the extent of it. Then I heard Derek had proposed. I genuinely didn't care. If he was happy, fine. Maybe he would finally focus on something other than fighting me. Then the retirement order was finally approved. The marital portion had been calculated. My awarded share was going to be transferred. By that point, I barely thought about the amount anymore. Finishing the process mattered more. Then I saw the number. I thought there had been a mistake. I looked again. Then I called Clara. Is this right? Yes. That's my share. Yes. I sat down. Years earlier, I had assumed my share might be around $12,000. That was why I thought leaving the retirement alone in exchange for keeping roughly $12,000 in support made sense. I had been very wrong. My share was worth roughly 4 times that amount. It wasn't Derek's entire retirement account. Not even close. It was the portion connected to our marriage and awarded to me through the divorce process. But it was still far more than I expected. And the first thing I remembered was his voice. You're paying every cent back. He got what he demanded. The $12,000 issue was reopened. And, because he insisted on reopening it, I stopped leaving the retirement issue untouched. Had Derek accepted my offer, I never would have finished the division. He would have kept much more money. The strangest part was that I hadn't planned any of it as revenge. If I had known the retirement share was worth that much, I probably would have pursued it years earlier. Instead, I had been willing to leave it behind just to avoid another fight. Derek was the one who changed my mind. Not long after the transfer, I received an email from Sadie. At first, I assumed it was about Piper or Lucas. Then I started reading. According to her, Derek was refusing to set a wedding date because of me. She said I had cleaned out his retirement. She said I had stolen money he worked for. I closed the email. A few minutes later, I opened it again because I still couldn't believe she had sent it. I waited until I was calm before replying. I did not empty Derek's retirement account. The court divided the marital portion according to the divorce order. She answered almost immediately. You still took money he worked for. There was that same argument again. Derek worked. Therefore, everything was his. The years I had spent raising our children somehow disappeared. I replied, I spent those years raising our family instead of building retirement savings through my own employment. Her answer came back. That was your choice. For a moment, I wanted to explain everything. The pressure to stay home. The financial dependence. The years of unpaid work. Then I realized I didn't owe Sadie a defense of my marriage. So I kept it simple. I offered Derek another option. He could leave the post-remarriage support issue alone, and I would leave the unresolved retirement division alone. He demanded repayment. I pursued my retirement share afterward. She replied, you knew you would get more. No. I thought the amounts would be roughly the same. That was true. Then Sadie finally explained why she was really angry. Derek was apparently afraid to marry again because he believed another divorce could cost him more money. He kept talking about protecting his assets. He wouldn't set a wedding date. And somehow, that was my fault too. I should have stopped responding. Instead, I wrote, if he's worried about protecting assets he brings into another marriage, you can both speak with your own attorneys about a prenup. Her response came almost immediately. I shouldn't have to sign a prenup because you robbed him. That was enough. I sent one final message. Then this is an issue between you and Derek. And I blocked her. For a little while, the email bothered me. Not because I felt guilty. The retirement division had gone through attorneys, a court, and the plan administrator. Derek had years to cooperate. The amount transferred to me was my awarded share. What bothered me was how completely he had rewritten our history. In Sadie's version, Derek was apparently a hardworking man whose ex-wife took his money. There was probably no part about him refusing to support Piper and Lucas until his wages were garnished. No part about the arrears. No part about the custody case. No part about my retirement claim already being preserved in the divorce. No part about the choice I offered him. No part about nearly 4 years of delays. Just one sentence. My ex-wife took my retirement. That version was easier. Eventually, I stopped caring who believed it. The money didn't suddenly make me rich. Most of it went toward rebuilding financial security. Savings. Things I had postponed. Planning for a future I once thought I would never be able to afford. The important part wasn't what I bought. It was what the money represented. Years earlier, Derek had convinced me that financial dependence meant I couldn't survive without him. Money had been one of the biggest reasons I was afraid to leave. He questioned every expense. Made me feel irresponsible for needing ordinary things. Then, after we separated, he refused to support the children until a judge ordered him to. Years later, he fought over $12,000 because he wanted to prove I had received something I shouldn't have. And the result of that fight was me finally pursuing the retirement share I had been willing to abandon. I never told Piper and Lucas the financial details. They knew there had been court fights. They knew their parents had struggled to get along. They did not need the numbers. Their relationship with Derek was theirs. I wasn't going to use them to prove I was right. Owen and I just kept living. Our life is ordinary. I mean that as a compliment. Bills get discussed. Problems get solved. Arguments end. Nobody follows anyone from room to room demanding the last word. Nobody worries that money will disappear because someone is angry. It took me a long time to realize how valuable that kind of peace is. And every once in a while, I still think about the choice Derek had. He could have said, fine. Keep the $12,000. I want this over. I would have agreed. The retirement account would have remained untouched by me. There would have been no 4-year fight. No sanctions. No retirement transfer. No angry email from Sadie blaming me for why Derek was afraid to get married again. Instead, Derek needed to win. That had always been his problem. Compromise felt like losing to him, even when compromise was cheaper. You're paying every cent back. Fine. He got the repayment ruling he demanded. And I stopped walking away from something I was already entitled to claim. My retirement share ended up worth roughly 4 times more. I didn't create some elaborate revenge plan. I just stopped protecting Derek from the consequences of the fight he insisted on starting. Sadie thinks I robbed him. Derek probably still thinks the whole thing was unfair. I think he was offered the cheaper exit and rejected it because proving a point mattered more to him than ending the conflict. So what do you think? Was I wrong to pursue my share of Derek's retirement after he forced the support issue back into court, or did he simply choose the most expensive possible way to get what he demanded?